Are you tired of spending your time and money chasing strategy after strategy only to discover what worked 10, 5, or even 2 years ago is not working now? Things shift fast in the online space, and if you're not keeping up, you're getting left behind. It's time for something different. Welcome to the Marketing, Media, and Money Podcast, where every single episode will be jam-packed with proven, profitable strategies, behind-the-scenes secrets, and what's working now resources from industry experts and global influencers to help you scale your business, shorten your learning curve, and stand out in a crowded, noisy marketplace. And now, your host, award-winning marketing and media strategist, and international speaker, Patty Farmer.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Marketing, Media, Money Podcast. I'm your host, Patty Farmer, and I am really looking forward to sharing today's industry expert with you. And right now, we are really going to be spending time talking about something that I think is very timely, very important, and something everybody seems to want to know about, and things that I get asked about a lot. So bringing on an expert today for this topic was a lot of fun. And not only that, but I even reached out to my own network and said, what would you like me to ask her? So this is going to be a good one, as they always are, of course. But get your pen and paper ready because she is going to share some writer-downers for sure. So let me tell you a little bit about her. So Linda Claire Puig is an internationally recognized relationship marketing expert and founder of the Done For You article service known as Ready to Go Articles. Linda has produced newsletters for associations, small businesses, and solo professionals for over 30 years and has trained thousands of individuals in the way of the newsletter. Linda is on a mission to help entrepreneurs fall in love with the newsletter and use this important marketing tool to create a successful business that supports their dream life. And speaking of dream life, Linda is also co-founder of Adventurous Life International, which brings groups of professionals and entrepreneurs ages 40 and up to international destinations to live, work, and travel in community. And on that note, before I bring her on, I want to be able to say this is how I actually met Linda in person. I'd known her for years and years online, but in person, I was very fortunate to be able to go to Italy with her and Adventurous Life. And it was probably the trip of my life, and something that I plan to do a lot more of. And the format that she does it really, really hit home with me, as I'm sure it did with a lot of other professionals too. So we'll touch on that maybe a little bit at the end if we don't run out of time. But Linda, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Patty. It's a real pleasure, and I can't wait to dig into this topic.
Me too. I really love this topic. And as I said, I even reached out to my peeps and said, listen, I could have kept you here for 2 hours on just questions I know I would have had, but I was like, let's see what they want to know and just kind of see what were the questions that they wanted and how much of them really resonated with my mastermind and my tribe and my Facebook groups. And so it was really kind of amazing for me to figure out that a lot of people are asking the same questions. They want to know the same things and they're not getting answers. And today we're going to get those answers. So let's kind of dive in with that. But before we start asking the deep dive questions, why don't you tell us a little bit about really how you got into this? I mean, 30 years, Linda, that's a long time to really be doing this. And that's why you do it so well, of course. But tell us a little bit about why you decided that's what you wanted to do, because you didn't just wake up one day and decided that's what you wanted, right?
No, I was fishing around initially for a way to raise my young child, who I think was 2 at the time, and stay at home. So I had been a journalist for newspapers and magazines in the past. And so I thought, okay, well, I have editorial skills. And so I put my name out there and started getting clients. And a lot of what the clients wanted was something that was, they either knew or I was able to tell them was solved by regular communication via newsletter. And this was back in the day of mostly print newsletters. So I did newsletters for a women's surf shop, for a prosthetics company, for, gosh, all kinds of different things. And that's when I really started to get a good feel for the power of them and the power of the stories within them and the power of the information that you share, the way you keep in touch with people. It was great. I loved it. It was my introduction to the whole topic. And then, of course, email began to take over, and I started studying this medium and learning that there was a lot similar, but kind of some things that were different. Obviously, the technology is different and whatnot, and there's a whole bevy of strategies and tactics that you use when you're using email, right? So now I still actually do a few newsletters for some clients that are still print, but most of the people that I work with are in the email land. So that's how I got into it.
I love that. And I think email marketing is so important right now, more important than ever. But I think that one of the things that people talk about all the time, if I had $1 for every time I've heard somebody say that email is dead, I don't think it's dead. Chris Brogan says email's not dead, bad email.
That's the best way to put it. No, email is not dead. And there's a website called emailisnotdead.com. And they have a lot of research and studies and whatnot that are basically proving that point. And even as recently as 2019, there were a few numbers that I found really telling. One was that 75% of marketers say that email marketing is bringing them a good to excellent return on their investment dollars. And 83% of consumers say that email is one of their preferred methods of brand communication. And just to give you a comparison, Facebook for that was a far second with 38%. So it's definitely still here. The Wall Street Journal even it was a little over a year ago in 2019 had an article that was titled "The Hot New Channel for Reaching Real People, email." I mean, I just laughed when I saw that because I was like, oh, it's so hot. It's so new. Right.
I think one of the things that I find very interesting when people think about email is that we're always talking about, in the marketing world, right? We're always talking about attracting, clients and retaining clients and how much it costs so much more to retain a client. I mean, it costs so much less to retain a client than to get a new client. Right. But yet, while everybody recognizes that to be true, I still see people all the time not really understanding that while you can get somebody to subscribe to something or to opt into something, it's getting them to stay that is so important. So really, honestly, what's your stick strategy is always what I like to say is how are you going to get them to stick around? Because everybody reads their email with one finger on the delete button.
And the unsubscribe button first. Secondly, sure. Yeah.
Which actually, I think that is really true. But with that said, so here's my question. Where do you think, just talking about unsubscribe, where do you think the unsubscribe should go? Because I know I see people and they put it at the very bottom in size 1 font and in the lightest gray, trying to hide it. And I personally believe if people don't want to be on my email list or they don't feel that I'm, providing the relevant, consistent content they want, we pay to have people on our email list. I just assume them unsubscribe. So where do you think is the best place to put it? And what do you think about how people should change the way they think about unsubscribing?
Great questions, both of them. So I personally think the unsubscribe goes at the bottom. And here's why. Because even if somebody doesn't want to be on my list, I want them to see what they're missing first in that particular email before they unsubscribe, right? It's a very last ditch opportunity to keep them. And the way you keep them, obviously, is to have the kind of relevant information that might touch them, right? So I want them to see what they're missing first before they unsubscribe. And then secondly, your question, I love this because most people that I talk to that are paranoid about unsubscribes are not realizing that you're not in the business of avoiding unsubscribes. That's not your business. So you just have to take that as a thing that happens. And definitely don't get notifications when people unsubscribe. Just go in and check it from time to time. Make sure it's not, astronomical or responding to any one particular email that you need to understand why. You monitor it, but just don't worry about it too much.
I think that is so true. I just kind of say embrace it. Just embrace
good
it.
way to put it.
It's like a cost of doing business in some aspects, right?
Yeah.
I want the people who are on my list, right, who get my email to want to get my email, right? I want them to like to be there and stuff. So what would you say is the best low-cost email marketing tool?
I think I would say the best of the email marketing tools. I actually look at it as 3 different ways to use email when you're talking about marketing as a whole. One of them is autoresponders, where when somebody opts in, they get some initial information to give them whatever the gift is that you're giving them, and then a series of emails to hopefully let them get to know you and whatnot. So I think autoresponders are great. Obviously, we have what I call say yes emails. Those are promotional emails that are just specifically for promoting an offer that you are making or promoting a webinar that you're going to be giving. It's just a very tight, targeted email. But I think that of the 3, I haven't given you the third one yet because it's the most important one, and that is the relationship building emails. Some people call them newsletters. Some people call them nurture emails. They are the emails that are all about letting people know, number one, you're credible. You have a certain expertise and authority that they can trust, they can count on. Number 2, that you're relatable. They can relate to you. Maybe that's because you've had the same experience as they, or else you just know how to talk about that thing that they are engaged in, that they are wanting information about or understanding of, right? And so those kinds of relationship building emails are super, super important, because otherwise what you have is, here's your free gift, and then 6 months later, hey, buy this thing.
Or as in some cases, they do it the very next day, right?
or even that. Yes, that's true. That's another version of that. Yeah, exactly. So it's really important that these emails be consistent and relevant to the people that are on your list or are in your ideal audience, to their needs and goals and aspirations, connected to your expertise, right?
I love that. I know one of the things that I like to do with the people that are on my list, those are your loyal fans, right, is I like to provide them with things that nobody else gets, right? I tell them, like, you will get content that nobody else gets. And, I think that's really a way of showing your integrity when people see that that's absolutely true. It kind of helps with that know, like, trust factor when they really see that. And then I also tell them that, they'll hear about things before anybody else does, and we'll probably get best case pricing too.
So all of the above. It's great. All of that you just said, Patty, is a way of keeping your newsletter as the pinnacle of access to you. Like, it's the diamond of all the things that you offer in terms of connection and communication. It's the diamond. So people want to be on your email list because they get that additional content and the first chance ats,
I think that really is true. But then I think what is very important as well is really how you integrate your email marketing, right? Your newsletter and everything else you do via email, like autoresponders and all those things you talked about, but how you also integrate those with social media, right? Because it's like the 1-2 punch, right? Peanut butter and jelly. So I think it works really well together. What are some of your favorite things to do via social media that also help your email marketing?
Well, there are 2 main things. The first one is use social media to build your email list. And by that, I mean post things on social media that go back to an opt-in page on your website. So maybe it's a free gift. Maybe it's a sign up for my newsletter to get this great content. There are all kinds of ways to message people to go and get on your list. And that's a really wonderful 1-2 kind of a tactic. You find your people on social media, and then you get them over to your website and onto your list. And there's a very, very important reason for that. And so this is like my mantra for years, is that social media followers and connections and all that stuff, they're not yours. They could go away in a heartbeat. And I know at least half a dozen to maybe even a dozen people who've either lost their entire Twitter following or had a Facebook page shut down for some mistaken reason, but they can't get back their, all of their connections. So it's important to get people from social media over to your list. So that's one thing that's really key about the integration of the two. The other one is Facebook challenges. There are some events that you can do on social media. I particularly like the Facebook challenge method. And this is a really, really fun kind of interactive way for people to get a big taste of you and what you do in a fun way, in a way that helps them attain skills, right day by day. So usually Facebook challenges are 5 days. So you get a different skill, you get a little bit of training and have some homework. And so you gain a little bit of an understanding and a skill each day that leads you through this process that whatever the Facebook challenge topics is will get you to. So in that way, you're taking the best of social media and the best of your understanding. And of course, you're getting them on your list, right? And it's a big dose, like it's a big, huge dose all at once. It's not an autoresponder drip system. It's like a fire hose of, look at all the wonderful stuff I have to offer you. And I don't mean a fire hose like it's too much, but it's just it's a broader application than a series of autoresponders.
I like it because I feel that Facebook challenges, because they're 5 days, it's like they give you bite-sized information as you can take it in and start to implement, right? And I think that they build on each other, right? And I feel like when you have a Facebook challenge, it's one of my favorites as well. You also build community with the other people in the challenge as well. And
Yes.
I think that is kind of a great serendipitous advantage.
Yeah, and there's an element of accountability there too that's not there with, say, an autoresponder series. There's like, okay, here's your task, go do it. And we're going to give prizes if you do. So there really is that. What people need is sometimes to be taken by the hand and sat down. I mean, Patty, I don't know if this happens to you, but if you're writing a book, how hard is it to get your butt in the chair, right? To sit down and start writing. So it's very, very helpful to get people grounded in a daily task that they can do easily and feel accomplished.
I know, and I think that accountability within a community really works too, because even if you're like, oh, this is what I'm going to do, or then you're hearing what other people do, right? And they're telling you, like, oh, like that gives you new ideas, and that kind of inspires you to be like,
Yes.
oh, I never really thought of that. I do think that accountability, because it's not like they're asking you to do this, create this whole big funnel, or like,
No.
It's not like, they're having you do something huge. They build in small bite-sized steps.
Yes.
And so I find they're very, very valuable. I've done them, had people do them on Facebook are the ones I love the best, but I really like them. And I've seen them with video. I've seen them, done so many different ways, but I really do like them. And I really do feel that they do work as a good email marketing tool. So I agree with you 100%. So sometimes I think it's important to know what not to do as it is to know what to do, right? So first of all, what would you say is the biggest myth about using email to market?
Well, we covered the biggest myth, which is that it's dead, that you shouldn't use it.
Sure.
After that, I would say the biggest myth is that people don't want to hear from you, and they don't want to hear from you very often. Like they're kind of dreading your emails coming in. When you have the right audience, when you know them and they know you, which happens through your email communications, then they start looking forward to receiving your next thing. Because I'm such a big traveler and travel with your business kind of person, my audience knows that when they see a subject line that's somehow related to travel, that's like, oh yeah, let's just dig into that. They really love that. So I write a lot of actual business stories or business articles, business tips based on my travel experiences. So that's a particular way for me that I really enjoy keeping.
And I enjoy getting that too, by the way. So I have to tell you, I would say I was just looking at this last week. I probably have about 20 to 23 people that I literally have folders in my inbox that I love everything they say. And I know, like on Tuesday, Kathy's going to be sending me this, and it's always going to have something really good. She always does something that's thought-provoking, and I really like it. And so I always save it. When Michelle sends hers, I know that she's going to be talking about something that I know, and she always gives great resources and tools and stuff. And so I know those are going to be really good. You always talk about travel, and I love that because that's something super important to me. So I think that there are ways that then that's how you build relationships, right? That they know that's what you're going to talk about. And I think that is really very, very important. What would you say?
Patty, I wanted to say one more thing, if you don't mind.
No, go for it.
One of the things that is really hard for most people when they get started with nurturing their audience and sending, regular relationship building articles and emails is that they're afraid to put themselves out there, to be open with themselves. I can only speak right now from my experience to give you a really super good example. When I first started doing an email newsletter, my first 2 years of doing it, it was from my business, Claire Communications. And I wasn't in there at all. And it wasn't until I finally said, okay, fine, because I'm a super big introvert. Fine, I'll put something about myself in there. And it was like a switch was turned on. All of a sudden, way more interaction, way more engagement, so I've gotten much more comfortable about doing that. But initially, a lot of people are really nervous about putting themselves in there. Even those who are, who have like an audience that's a very professional audience. I know this legal firm, when they do their website and all their email communications, they talk about their lawyers as if they're human beings and people. They say, what would you have been doing if you weren't a lawyer? What was your favorite thing to do when you were a kid? Like just interesting little tidbits. And all of a sudden it humanizes that person or yourself, to your audience. So that's one of the things that I just really want to encourage people to do, talk about yourself, not in a way that's all about me, because your newsletters and your articles, the type that are demonstrating your expertise and addressing the problems that your people have, those need to be about them. But there are other areas where you can include your own experiences, your own stories, etc. So that's really, really important.
I think those are the type I like to read too. I like to read the ones when they tell a story. My friend Ava, when she sends out her newsletter, every time I get it, she takes something that she did that week, and then somehow, I don't even know how she manages to do it week after week, but she always manages to turn that somehow into something about her business, or something in a way that's a business tip of some type, or something I should take away from it, or what she learned from it. I mean, I even remember one time I read this, and it really kind of sunk in for me, that I read this newsletter that came, and basically in the newsletter, it was like what I learned from Olivia Pope. I was like, what? And it was so interesting because, at that time, a lot of people were watching
Scandal. Right? Yeah.
And I found that so interesting. And I remember reading it thinking, man, I wish I'd have thought of that, because that was so good. And it really, was an eye-opener, which I think kind of leads into my next question, which I think is something that people ask all the time, are about subject lines, right? So we know how important subject lines, and I actually have a couple of questions about it. So here's the first one. I'll kind of put them all together because I think you'll be able to fit them all in an answer, which is, how long should their subject line be? And will their email open rate get affected if they use numbers or special characters in the subject line?
Special characters like asterisks, or is that what you mean?
Marks or
okay, right. Okay, great questions. And before I even answer those, I wanted to say we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but I'm going to be doing a Facebook challenge very soon. And one of the days we're going to be all about subject lines. So I can't wait for people to experience that, because there's a lot to know about subject lines, and they are the most important piece of your email, because without a good subject line, people aren't going to open them, right?
Right.
So I'll give you one of the secrets is that the best number of characters is if you can try to pack all your good, juicy words into 35 characters or less, that's best. It doesn't mean that you can't go over, but really just always try to keep it 35 characters or less.
Oh, not even words, but characters. Oh, that's really
Characters, yeah. And spaces count.
Oh, that's important.
Yeah.
That is important to know for sure. So what would you say is the best frequency to send emails to people?
My glib answer is more than you are now, most likely. Most people are like, oh, should I send it like once a quarter? Oh, okay, I'll send it once a month. No. I mean, best is at the very least once a week. And I know some people are going to go, what? Yeah, once a week. But I really think that more frequently even than that is better, because there's a lot of people emailing, a lot of noise, and a lot of times that people could see something from someone else and react, when if they had been getting your stuff, they would have reacted to you first. So you don't want to be annoying, right? I do know a few people who email every day, and one of them kind of pulls it off and the other one doesn't so much. So I think that they do that because they get such good response and reaction. They're always in front of their audience saying either, here's something helpful for you. Here's a resource. Here's something that you should know. Here's something that I know that you may want to know about. Just all kinds of stuff it's constantly there. I personally wouldn't want to do every day, except in certain very short, crunchy periods of time. If you've got something that's really time sensitive, that's going on. But I like to do 2 times a week, 3 times a week, even on a fairly regular basis.
One of the things that I find for me is that there are certain times now, I will say that what I love, so there's 2 things that I really love, and it's kind of funny because it's really sort of a head game, really. One of the things that I love is when people send me in their newsletters or when they send me an email and they give me something and they say no opt-in necessary, which is really kind of funny because you're already on their email. Right? So when somebody says no opt-in necessary, like you're already on your email. You don't know. So, but I have to tell you, even though I know it in my head, it just feels good sometimes. And so I know somebody who utilizes that a lot. And for some reason, it just feels good. Right? Mm-hmm. And the other thing I love is when somebody's going to have a launch of some site or something's going on that they're going to be emailing me more often. I like it when they tell me. Mm-hmm. I like it when they just say to me, just so that because, like they'll tell me about whatever it is their launch is. And then they'll say, just so you may be getting a little bit more, email, but I hope you'll bear with me. It'll only be for, whatever they want to say. But I like it when they say that, because now I know, you're not going to be emailing me this often all the time. So I'll be like, okay, I can handle it for that long, right? If it's something that I'm not interested in, right? Yeah. Or something that then I already say yes, right? Or whatever. But I think that it is important. And that's kind of really part of the communication that it is part of the relationship building, right? We talk to them.
Yeah, it's true. I'm a real person talking to you as a real person. Here's what's going on. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there are also ways to let people know that they can unsubscribe from that
I love that
launch of emails, but still stay on your list.
Yes. I don't know if every email place has that, but I do know that sometimes when I get them and they say, if you don't want to hear about this, click this and we won't give you that anymore. I'm like, oh, I just love you. That always makes me feel so happy when people do that. I do love that, I have to say. I think that is really good. So would you say that when you're thinking about newsletters and email marketing, what do you think you need to do different if you're B2B versus B2C? Or do you think it's the same?
That's such a great question. It depends on who your B is. Let me just say, I don't think there's a ton of difference. There could be a slight difference if, for example, people who are like executive coaches or work with exclusively C-suite executives, you might need a different approach for them. Not a different approach in terms of conveying your credibility and your trust and stuff like that, but they're not going to be reading emails like your average business person would be. They're generally not going to, and that too has exceptions. But so it really depends on who your B, if you're a B2B person, is. So otherwise, I think not a lot of difference. I remember talking to a guy who ran an antique shop, and he was in one of my courses, and I complimented him on his insight that my course about newsletter marketing and keeping in touch with your audience with interesting stories and articles was also appropriate for his business. Even though he was an antiques dealer, he started to get the idea that, oh, I can share stories about these antiques, or I can share stories about the people who used to own them or the people who are buying them. Like, there's so many ways that you can stay in touch with people in interesting ways that for the most part, I don't think it matters whether you're B2C or B2B.
Oh, I really love that answer. That was a good answer. So now let's talk about...
Glad you approve.
Yes, I do. So let's talk about metrics. So, I think that a lot of times people just think that all they have to worry about is what their open rate is. And I feel like there's so many other metrics they really should be watching for. What would you say are some of the top ones they really should be looking at?
I want to say one thing about open rates first.
Okay.
And then I'll say what the other important ones that I think are. Open rates, even though they are good to pay attention to in terms of trends, they are not necessarily exactly counting the people who are actually seeing your messages. So, and it gets a little bit techie, but there are some people that have their images turned off, for example, in their email. And if they don't turn them on, they're never going to count as an open. So they may read your entire email and never count as an open, because that's how open rates are counted, is by these little invisible images that are embedded into your emails. And there are people who will count as an open that will never ever read your thing. And so you may think they're not really an open, but at the same time, they did see your email coming into their inbox. So even that touch is a positive one, is a good one. So
I think that actually is true, because I know for me, I read all of my inbox in the preview window.
Yeah.
And only if I'm going to click on something or I want to see something will I actually click and open it. Yeah. I just have a very big preview window and I just read everything.
I do too. It's the rare email that I will click on. So don't get too freaked out about your open rates. The main thing you want to do is just kind of, if you start noticing a big drop off, then maybe something's wrong or whatever. So then the couple of other things to pay attention to are the click rate. How many people are actually clicking on the links that you're providing? That's really important, because that tells you who's interested enough to bother, right? Who's interested enough to at least check out what's behind that link. And, all kinds of different ways to get more clicks on your links. But that's just a really, really important one. Yeah, I think that's probably the most important one outside of opens.
Well, do you think people should be paying attention to bounce rates and unsubscribes?
Well, yes, in the way that I talked about earlier. You want to see if there's any big, huge thing that happens any given day. If you're used to getting, let's say when I send out an email, I consistently get between 5 and 10 unsubscribes. And if all of a sudden one day I got 25, I would either look to see, did something happen? Was there something, Was the email crappy looking? Did it really not show up well? What was the problem? Or was it the topic? Was it something about the article and the way it was written or whatever? What was it that made that jump all of a sudden?
That makes sense, though, when you really think about it, which is the reason why a lot of people do A/B testing with subject lines and different things, just so that they can check on those things.
Yeah.
So let's talk about segmentation, right? And I feel like this is really, really important. It doesn't matter what you're doing. I think it is very, very important because I know every single person, I use segmentation to a fine art. But to be totally honest, I even do it on social media. There is not one person on social media that I am connected to that isn't on a list. Even because social media will even allow you to do it, right? And a lot of people use that. But I really do it, and I think it is super, super important. And then so that I keep a clean list, I vet my list all the time. Every quarter, I send them something that basically says, to make sure that I'm honoring you by sending you content that you find relevant. Please click on the content that you actually want to receive. And when they click on those buttons, they're just kind of putting themselves in their own list of what they want to have. And I feel like that keeps it really clean for me.
Yeah.
And stuff though. But I think that people who just have a general newsletter list, I think that if they segmented and did other things, it would just be much more effective. What do you think about that?
I agree with you, Patty. And the only part that I want to, I'm not pushing back. I just wanted to provide a different perspective.
I love that.
A lot of people just don't have the time to do that. Like they're the only people doing, running their business, and they don't have the time to do that. And so I say, rather than wait until you're perfect, you've got the time to do it perfectly, because what Patty is describing is really best practices. So rather than waiting for time to do it perfectly, do it in some way now. Like it's just really important that you get going with your regular communication, your regular contact. And if it means that for a while you're sending to a general newsletter audience and not segmenting, so be it. It's way better than nothing.
Well, and then not perfect is always work, right?
Yes.
Kind of leads me to, what advice would you give to someone if they really haven't been sending a newsletter and maybe they have one opt-in or something, or they're doing like one-off kind of things that they're doing. So they have these people on their email list, but they just really haven't been nurturing them. What kind of advice would you give to them because it's kind of a A/B question. One, if they really are just starting, what's the things that you think they should really do first? And two, if they have done it and then they kind of stopped doing it and now they sort of have a cold list, or what would you say would be a good way to kind of clean that up and get it nurturing again?
Yeah. Well, let's just take it A first. So if you're just getting started, just start writing your articles, first of all, know who you're writing to and what their issues are, right? That's a huge mistake that people make. Who are they demographically? What keeps them up at night? Who are they emotionally? What does their ideal life look like? And what's in the way of that ideal life? So really know them, and then just start writing to them. Even if your list, people always say, but I don't have a list. And I always say, if you look at who you're in contact with, who you've been in contact with, who loves you and would love to hear from you, whether that's friends, family, or colleagues, or people you've met, people that would love to hear from you, you've already got a list right there. And you start there. And then you do your opt-in and start getting more people, and you post on. There's all kinds of ways of building that community and building it in a strong and rapid and clear fashion, right? So I know a fellow who started writing people and a growing list of people for an entire year before he ever even offered anything for sale or for people to join, because that's just that was what his priority was, developing that relationship. And so as he was developing the relationship, he was building the website and making the programs and whatnot. And a lot of people get that exactly opposite. They want to get the website done and get the, all of the materials done, and then say, here, but there's nobody to say here, ta-da, to,
Oh, I say sell first, then create. That's my motto.
Yeah, you bet. Well, this is nurture first.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that was A. And then B, if you have let your list go cold, there's one thing I advise people not to do, and that is don't apologize. Unless there's something huge and important and something that your list would really love to know about, don't say anything about, sorry, I haven't been in touch, or it's been a long time. Just forget it. Just start giving value. And that value can look like great articles that are, addressing the needs and aspirations of your audience. Just start sending them great articles, or start sending them gifts. Let them know you're thinking about them. You created this new thing and you want them to have it. I mean, any relationship that starts with a gift is already on to a good start, right?
Absolutely. So let's just say now you do have this email list, right? And you are nurturing them, and, your frequency is, dead on. What would you say? Because I always want to know what not to do. I mean, I have to tell you, I always love that. I don't know, must be the marketer.
I do too.
Right. So what would you say are some marketing mistakes that people could make that would discourage people from, say, buying their offers?
Sure. They're really simple. So take this to heart, because they're actually easy to do because they're simple and they make sense. If you are writing to the wrong people, or you're writing the wrong things to your people, then that's going to be a big turnoff. Not just a turnoff, but it's something that they can ignore because you're not speaking to them in the language and with the resources that they need to hear. You're not doing anything to establish your position as an expert on XYZ. So definitely know your market. And if you don't, go out and figure them out, do some interviews, look at publications and see what they're writing to your audience if you can find that. So really, it's super, super important, and step one always. So that's the biggest mistake, is when you're not writing to what your people need to be hearing, because you don't know them. And then I would say also that they, I'm not going to go into it again because we already covered it, but they need to know you. So when you're just a stiff board or somebody who's not even really in the newsletter, it's not compelling. It's just not. So let them get to know you. Incorporate stories from your life, past, present, like Ava's. That's what I do with my travel stories. I try to look at the symbology and how can I make that into a lesson or a story for my audience and what I talk to them about. Do a manifesto, charge forward with something that you feel very strongly and passionately about. Share interviews that you've done, like this one. You can be opinionated or not. If you're an opinionated kind of person, be that. If you're not, then don't. So just be you and let them get to know you. That's super important. What was your first question?
No, I think that was it. Just the question about what would discourage people from, not wanting to buy your stuff. So I think that's really important to know, right? Because people want you to be authentic.
And when you know people, then you know what they need, and you can cater your offers to them because you know them so well. And when you email people on a regular basis, they'll write you. You'll be in actual communication with them. I had a period of time in my business where I was toying with not answering my emails, just letting a support person do that. And I found that I don't like that. I really like answering my own emails. So when people respond to my newsletter, I just write them back. And, that's great.
And I love it when I know that people do that. Or sometimes when somebody puts in an email that I get that says, oh, hit reply, and then they don't, or, I don't like that. Like if you're asking me to reply and I do, then I want you to reply right back if you're asking me. And so I love it when somebody does that. It kind of really elevates that to me. So I think that is really awesome. I have to tell you, Linda, you have shared so much, and I really thank you so much for, taking the time to just kind of share this valuable information. But I have to tell you, we talked a few minutes ago about, how it's always good to give a gift. And I know that you have a gift too, but I know that also you have a project. And I think one of the things that I think it is really important that this project that you're working on right now really kind of will help people with literally everything we have talked about today. So if they're thinking, oh my gosh, I want to learn a little more about that. And like what you said earlier about the subject lines, and which I think is very important, like how can I do that? You actually have something that you're going to be doing that will actually help them with that. So why don't you tell them a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I'm super excited about it. It's a Facebook challenge, and it's called Love Up Your List Challenge. It's all about how to use email to make your audience love you, trust you, buy from you, etc. And so each day we're going to take a tiny little chunk of learning, and I'm going to give you a homework assignment based on that and a free handout of some really cool tips each day. So I'm super excited about it, and I can't wait because it's one of my favorite things to do.
Well, I'm excited about it too, because you really are the go-to person in this space, and you have been for literally as long as I have known you. I don't know anybody who does it better than you. And so I really appreciate you being here really to share this. So what would you say? Like, you didn't already share enough value, right? But this is the portion of the show where we kind of have open mic, where we kind of hand the mic over to our guest and really ask you, if you had to narrow it down to one marketing, media, or money strategy, what would that strategy be that you'd want to share with the audience?
Well, I think it's pretty obvious that it's email your audience, right? But the finer point that I want to make is to email your audience frequently enough. I really think that that's an important piece of developing that relationship and staying consistently in relationship with them. So yeah, use email for its biggest and most powerful punch, and do it frequently enough, and you will be shocked at what happens in your business. I guarantee you, it was with me.
I love that. So how can my audience connect with you?
Well, I'm going to give my email address, just because we were just talking about wanting to be in communication with people. I'd love for people to write me and let me know what's on their mind regarding communicating with your audience and whatnot. I'd certainly love for them to join me in the Facebook challenge, but I think you've got a link for that, right?
Yes, it will be in the show notes and pretty much some of the other things you talked about too.
So my email address is Linda, Linda, at Claire, Claire, communications.com.
Oh, that was nice and easy. Well, you're the first person who's been willing to give their email address. So that says something about you right there. So thank you so much, Linda. I really, really appreciate it. I can't wait to sign up for the challenge myself. I'm sure I will learn something, as will everybody else. I'm really excited about it. Thank you so much for being here with me today.
My pleasure.
And thank you to the audience. Thank you so much for being here and taking your time to be with us, joining us on the Marketing, Media, Money podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and review the podcast on your favorite listening platform. And make sure to check out our sister publication, the Marketing, Media, and Money magazine, where you can grab your free lifetime subscription right now at www.marketingmediamoney.com. For everyone, please make it a phenomenal day. And remember, if your day is not phenomenal, you have the power to change it.
Thank you for joining us today on the Marketing, Media, and Money podcast. To shorten your learning curve even more, make sure to grab your free copy of the Marketing, Media, and Money magazine at www.marketingmediamoney.com. I promise your business will thank you.